back to the point where you mentioned, hey, just don't climb up the roof and do all that and have to redo it all over again. Do you have any advice on like, say, how many radios per gateway is too many? Or, for example, the users if you're climbing up the roof right now, can you maybe give a more concrete examples? What is a bad uh, outdoor installation right now that they might try not to do?
Yeah, so the radios per gateway, I've mentioned this before. There isn't really hard limits, but we now have, thanks to Jeremy, by the way, all three ports working on the Freedom Cry edition of the gateway. So, and when we initially built it, there was a reason why we put in three ports. So that I think that like three is a good number of radios. Although you don't have, if you want to do a more weird setup and do a switch, then, you can have multiple radios per gateway. The limiting factor is the gigabit port that we have on it, and also ultimately like the usage that you will expect to get. But I would not do more than, I would say, 5, 6 maybe. 3 is okay. You can never go wrong with like one-to-one coupling. So that's the guidance on the radios per gateway. As far as the other part about the climbing roofs and good locations, so you want to place the radios in locations where there is a lot of slow moving people, basically. So that's kind of probably like the best guidance that I can give. It can be indoors, and you can use indoor radios for that, or it can be outdoors. So if you have, a balcony overlooking Times Square, if you have the money to buy an apartment like that, and you want to put a radio there, then that's kind of like a good location, right? Or if you are like, if you own a coffee shop, the traditional example, right, or a library or whatever, you don't want to be putting them next to freeways because like the phones won't connect to the small cells that have limited coverage if there's cars zooming by. This is what the macro cells are for. Generally, like the offload small cells, they're designed for like fairly dense areas where people are, not moving very quickly. And you want to be basically, like pointing your cells towards those locations, or the antennas on the cells that you connect to them towards those locations. If you're deploying multiple cells, I would say that, make sure that you have them pointing in different locations. Like we've seen setups where people would like have a rig of the indoor cells, and they would have literally like 15 indoor cells pointing in the same exact direction. Like this is just not going to work. Like, once we move to the smarter rewards, you will earn 0 mobile for that kind of setup, because not only is it not good, it's actually like bad, because you're just creating like interfere, like probably your cells, like your phone won't probably connect to your cells because you're just creating like noise and interference, and it's just bad. So point your cells in different directions. And also be cognizant that CBRS band is very sensitive to attenuation, unlike LoRa. So if you have a cell pointing a brick wall, and then there's maybe people like on the other side of that brick wall, like they won't be able to see that. So if there is maybe some trees or bushes, that's okay, but don't expect that the signal will penetrate through hard obstacles very well. Soft obstacles, okay. If you get line of sight to people with phones, that's a lot better. But again, we see people that are like mounting stuff on their balconies, and they just point it to like a forest, and they're like nowhere, right? Like there's no people there, just trees. So unlikely that anybody will ever connect to your cells. Like you're not going to be getting like miles and miles to the city connectivity with CBRS. So, and one of the roadmap items for us is to really evolve the Explorer to make it a tool that will assist in some of this decision making. So you'll be able to see, like more or less what is the actual coverage that your cell provides, not just, is this hex purple or is it not, but, taking into account some of the clutter data that we have about particular locations and taking into account the information that we have about what your cell is and where it's pointing to be able to actually see what approximately you're covering. And also we'll be marking up some of the, sort of hexes as ones that we recommend versus not recommend. So one is just basically provide much more decision support data in a programmatic way for people to understand where to put cells and where not to put cells. I think we'll be making some announcements with respect to the, some of the hardware roadmap. I'll just kind of leave it at that for now. But, again, new opportunities both for the, community to get plugged in and for the users to, be deploying the network more effectively. So that's one part. And also, obviously, everybody has questions about like what's going to happen. Where's the demand going to come from? Like, who are the offload partners? Where the user is going to come from? How the data is going to be driven, etc. So we'll definitely have some, I think, very exciting updates on that front. What I can share without sharing too much.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, for dynamics into like what you're gonna find at Helium House, the best way to know it's gonna be at Helium House, New York City, September. I can't remember the date. I should know. 26th?
20th.
20th. Is to be there when that's announced.